is October the 3rd, 2007, and I'm here in Ada, Oklahoma. My name's Tanya Finchum. I'm with the Oklahoma State University Library, and we're doing an oral history project entitled Women of the Oklahoma Legislature. And I'm here with Billie Jean Floyd, who was in the Senate from 84 to 88, right?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure for you to come, and I was flattered that you all chose me.
Well, thank you. Our first topic of the day is to tell us a little bit about your childhood, where you were born, and then we'll work forward.
Okay. Well, my mother and dad came to Ada, Oklahoma in 1918, and my older sister was a baby then, and they came from Cole County. My mother's from Mississippi, my dad was from Texas, and so they met in Cole County, married, and came up here. And myself, my brother, and me, we were all born in Ada, and I was raised, and it was a wonderful time. I was born in 1929, Christmas Eve, 1929, and of course that was the beginning of the Depression. It was the next winter, I understand, was a terribly cold winter, but I ruined Christmas for everybody that year, and that was when you didn't discuss whether there was a baby coming or not. It just sort of happened, and my brother and sister were most upset when I arrived and spoiled Christmas, but they got over it. And my childhood was wonderful. I didn't have to worry about the environment. I didn't have to worry about anything. We apparently were pretty well insulated from the Depression, in that my dad did have a job with Railway Express. My mother was a homemaker, always there when we came home from work or from school. She was always there, 3 meals and clean clothes, and just a typical stay-at-home mom of that time period. And I had no cares in the world. It was just wonderful. I can look back now, and it was just a delight. I had wished many times that my daughters had such a carefree time. Or you people today had such a carefree time as we did. I went to the Ada schools. I went to Horace Mann, Willard, Ada Junior High, Ada High School. Graduated high school in 1947. And one of the reasons that my parents moved to Ada was that there was a college or a normal school here. And my mother was very, very interested and very concerned that we have an education. So there was never any question when I graduated high school. No doubt you went to college. So I went to college again. College was wonderful. I didn't have any worries there. Bridge and pinochle, sorority, not a care in the world. And the only thing that was different with my college years was that the veterans of World War II were coming back on the GI Bill. And we certainly had a different group of students, and the college life was changing a little bit then from, the rah-rah, that sort of thing that was probably right before us. And we were going into married students, men coming back, and it was different. We got a little bit of that in high school because my high school years were World War II years. Okay. And in junior high, we bought saving bonds and stamps every Monday morning. Everybody brought a quarter and brought a defense stamp, That was junior high. High school, there were a few of the boys in my high school classes that went into the service and didn't come back, many of them. And of course, watching Ken Burns now, his movie on the war, it brings back many fond memories of my high school and college that I really wasn't aware of then, but I can look back now and see what was going on. Mm-hmm. Then after college, as you want me to go on, then after college, again, graduate work. I graduated, and it was graduate school. I was very fortunate. I had some wonderful mentors in college. And I have always been an outdoor person. I love people. I was always bringing the whole neighborhood home when I was growing up. The tomboy in the neighborhood, always been a tomboy. And that is something else I think that has affected my going into politics like I did. When I was raised, we were not raised as a girl or a boy. We were raised as whatever needed to be done, you did. If it was iron, you ironed. If it was go out and help your dad dig a ditch, you did that. Wherever you were needed, paint the house, you helped paint, shingle the house, whatever it was. There was never any difference when I was growing up made between a woman's work or a man's work. We did whatever we needed to move the unit forward and to do our share, you know. So I think that has had a big influence on some of the things I've done in later life, the way I was raised. And so anyway, went to graduate school, went to Texas Women University, came back then, and taught. My first teaching year was in Duncan, and I taught third grade in Duncan. But back to my college years, I started doing my student teaching when I was a sophomore in college, and this was before teaching and that sort of thing was done. We had the lab schools in. So my mentors, I was doing all of the physical education, swimming, activities for Horace Mann lab school when I was from the time I was a sophomore until I graduated college. And so as a result then, after my 1 year of teaching third grade in Duncan, I came back. I mean, they invited me to come back, and I signed a contract at East Central University, so I came right into the university then teaching. And my first year of teaching, my check was $2,500.
For the whole year?
Oh, for the whole year. Oh, for the whole year. Yes, for the whole year. Oh, you bet, for the whole year. And I thought we'd never, I mean, when we reached $3,000, oh, golly. I mean, we were just ecstatic. I got married in 1952 or 3. I either got married on May the 2nd, 1953, or May the 3rd, or 1952, and I have to always check and see which it was. But I got married during that time, and my husband, Ben, was a Korean veteran, and we had gone together in high school. We grew up together, and we'd known each other, you know. So I got married, and he finished his degree, and he was lucky enough that he started teaching also in the Ada school system. And so we were married and then taught, and our first child, Carrie Floyd, was born in 1958. And then in 1961, our second daughter was born, Amy B. And so we have lived here all of our lives. Mother and dad, brothers and sisters. My brother and sisters did a little bit of time away from here, but Ben and I always stayed in Ada. This has just been roots, I guess you'd say. And so I taught, and then in 1984, it hit. And I said, I can do a better job than anybody up there. And so I decided to run for the state Senate seat, District 13.
Just like that?
Well, not just like that. I talked to some friends and we talked about it. The other thing when I was growing up, and now stop me if I'm doing things.
You're
Okay.
doing great.
When I was growing up, I think there's some questions there about who might have influenced you and all. Politics and religion were always discussed at meals or in our family. And, this was back in the day when I was growing up, when you sat around and you listened to the adults talk. And there was no television, very little radio, and you made up your own games and that sort of thing, and played paper dolls and playhouses and that. I mean, there was no commercial activities for children, so listening to adults was a real big part of growing up. And I had a grandfather, my dad's father, Wade Holland Fathery, was a big red-faced Irishman, and this was before DHS and that sort of thing. So he would come and spend 3 months with this child and 3 months with the next child, and he would, he was by himself then. And I can remember him telling me the stories about the Russians. They were not Russians, they were Russians, and he had some problems with the Pope, and he was but he had homesteaded in New Mexico. And he and my grandmother left Cole County also and went to western New Mexico, Comada, and they homesteaded there and nearly starved to death, I might add, because they were there parts of the Dust Bowl and that sort of thing. So anyway, it was not a good time to be going out there homesteading. But he loved politics and loved to read. And I remember him telling me stories, political stories. I wish I could remember more. And then I had an aunt, Aunt May Aslan. And Aunt May was my mother's older sister. And Aunt May, when I was just a little bitty kid, I can remember she would have her apron on and she would gather me up in those little cards that were about this long that were printed in black. And it was vote for Albert Dew, city treasurer or county treasurer or whatever it was. And it had to have that little union thing on it, you know. But it was a little black and white card. And she'd have probably 100 or 50 of those. And she would probably get $5 for doing the neighborhood, handing those out. But she'd have those in her apron pocket. And I'd do one side of the street and she'd do the other side of the street. And I can remember doing that and being fascinated by politics. But then again, politics were always discussed. It was always a lively discussion. And of course, my folks thought, and my aunt thought, Franklin Delano Roosevelt hung the moon. I mean, he was, well, they were. That was the time that they needed. And when he did his New Deal and when he saved people, and I can remember hearing my dad say, well, you know, if it hadn't been for him doing time payment, the poor working man would never have had refrigerators, cars, any of those things, because the working man had to have a way to buy those things, you know. And so it was always a lively discussion. Herbert Hoover, oh my goodness gracious. Bad scene, you know. And then from then on, I can even remember when John F. Kennedy was running, and of course Aunt May thought John F. Kennedy was wonderful, but I can remember hearing the discussion about Catholic president. It was just they just didn't know about that, you know. So those were some of the things, but that's kind of my early childhood and some of the things that have happened along the way. And I'll probably think of others as we talk if you want me to mention about those. But then when I ran for the Senate, I was elected. And
tell me a little bit about your campaign.
My campaign. Well,
campaign manager was yourself? Or?
Well, of course. Who else? Money. I ran there were 4 people, the incumbent,
male,
2 other men, and myself in the primary. And I think the fact that my name was Billie may have had some influence on the vote, because they didn't know whether I was a man or a woman. But I guess I've gotten the cart before the horse on that too, a little bit there. Before I tell you about my campaign, you want me to tell you why? One of the reasons why I did what I did. I told you that our oldest daughter was a veterinarian. Well, I really got involved big time with the Equal Rights Amendment. And I was very, very concerned that equal pay for equal work. And of course, I guess I have always been a flaming liberal. You just have to say that. I have always felt you could do anything you were big enough to do. But I never knew that there were any limitations. It was just never an issue. If you want to do it, set your sights and do it. Now, if you can't do it, well, then maybe you made a bad mistake and you need to do something else. You're not entitled to it just because you want to do it. Mm-hmm. But if you decide that you're going to be the senator from this district, well, power to you. You know, that's it. And of course, we live in a very redneck district. I mean, women are supposed to stay pregnant and barefooted. I mean, you know, it's just one of those things in this part of the country. That was the philosophy back so many years ago, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, the Equal Rights Amendment came up. And I went door to door. I went in Atoka and Cole County and froze myself to death with other women going door to door saying, sign this petition. And we all gathered all of these names on this petition to send to the Oklahoma State Senate and House so that they would, if Oklahoma had ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, it would have been the state that we needed to make it then a part of the Constitution. See? So, okay. I was there. Lou Watkins, Wes and Lou were living here at the time. And Lou taught at East Central, taught political science, and of course Lou and Wes were very active in politics. They were Democrats at that time, I might add. And so they were very active, and they helped us with, she did especially. And you would go to the door of those people in Atoka and Cole County, and those are two of the poorest counties in Oklahoma. And you'd knock on that door, and that lady understood what you were saying when you said, would you sign this because we feel that equal work and equal pay should be, you shouldn't get paid less just because you're a woman. And you should be treated equally on the job market. You should be considered for the job if you can do it. Not because you're black, not because you're white, but you just should be given equal treatment, or because you're a woman. And then it didn't happen. It didn't get any place. I was very frustrated. And Senator Roy Boatner from Durant, Clara, down that part of the country, was supposed to be the vote we were supposed to push over. That was it. We could get him, we'd have him, and this was where all these petitions were going to, was to him. And if he would change his vote from a no to a yes, we'd have it. Well, it didn't happen. Well, then I ran for the Senate, and I got elected. Stars in my eyes. Got up there, and then I heard. You're going to hear. Then I heard the discussion. Roy didn't have an opponent. He was not running. You run every 4 years in the state Senate. He didn't have an opponent. He could take the heat. He didn't intend to change his vote. He had already committed that he would be a no, a firm no. There would be nothing to it. We could have delivered a ton of paper up there. I was never so, I tell you, my eyes went open. But anyway, so that was one of my experiences that caused me maybe to do some other things a little bit later and has in fact affected what I've done since then. But anyway, that was one of the things that caused me to really get in politics. But when I ran my campaign, I think my primary, I spent maybe $5,000. Maybe. Homemade signs, hand to hand. You'll see a little bucket around here, and I should get one for you and show you. It was my trademark. I had these little buckets. Don't go away. I'll show you.
Okay.
There may be one right here, but it doesn't have it on it. Anyway, I'll show you. Carry these little buckets, and this one doesn't have it on it, but there's one. There's some in the house that still do, and it had Billie Floyd on it. Elect Billie Floyd, State Senate District 13, and we'd written it in ink and magic marker and everything else on there. I carried it full of peppermints. And this was this is what I spent some of my money for, with this peppermints. And we dittoed off, your vote means a mint to me. Vote Billie Floyd. And that slogan came from one of my students, a young man here in Ada, Harold Harbin. He came up to me and he said, Miss Floyd, this would just be great. He said, give him a peppermint. So I used that, and I said, I'd come up and I'd shake your hand and I'd say, hello, my name is Billie Floyd and I'm running for the state Senate. And I just want to tell you that your vote would mean a mint to me. And here it is to show you. And if I ran into somebody that was kind of crusty and didn't want to take it, I say, hey, go on. You can at least eat my campaign material, and you sure can't eat those cards those other people are handing out, And they would remember me from that. But I loved to campaign. I love people. And it was really, it was not work. It was fun. It was really a fun thing. And I wouldn't take anything for it. But that was one of about $5,000. And then, sure enough, I got there. And we had then, of course, there was a runoff. between the incumbent and myself. And I carried every box but one in the general election. Every one but one. And it was Joy, Oklahoma was the only box I didn't carry. And when we had my swearing in, the whole gallery at the state senate was full of people from Ada, Oklahoma. There has never been one like it, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying. And then we all went out to someplace out on North Kelly, someplace out there, where there was a Chinese student that had been a student at East Central, Georgine, and he was the maitre d' there at one of the restaurants. We filled it up. Everybody had. We ate after that, and it was a fun time, and we really had a lot of neat people in on it. So that's part of it. I think I finally spent about, I think maybe $20,000 maybe for the whole thing. I mean,
I won't touch it this day.
Oh, you couldn't even begin.
Well, did you live there or did you commute from here?
No, I lived. I rented an apartment, and I lived there. I went up every Sunday evening because I felt like being an old teacher. I had to get up there and get ready for the Monday morning class. And I had to go in. Then I went up every Sunday evening, and I lived in an apartment. And then I would come home on Thursdays and do the things in the district like you're supposed to do. But I lived there.
Describe a typical day while you were there.
Well,
how early and how late?
Well, you hit the road early. I'd hop out of bed and get ready to go and get to the Capitol by shortly after, around 8 o'clock, 8:30 at the latest, because you needed to get there, get in. The first year, I brought a secretary from home. And that was something else that I found out later that probably you shouldn't do, because those ladies that are the secretaries in the House and the Senate, most of them, they don't have to work, and they do it because they want to, and they know the politicals, and they just go here, there. I mean, they go work for this senator or this. Usually, Senate stays in Senate, but it made it difficult because we were both new. And my best friend, who was also a secretary, she came up and was my secretary. So that made it kind of tough. There were 3 of us that were freshmen that year. They were Roy Sadler and Ben Brown, Helen Cole, and myself. And Helen was the Republican, and Ben and Roy Sadler were the other 2 Democratic senators that were elected when we were elected. So there were only 4 of us elected new in the Senate that year.
2 women and 2 men.
Mm-hmm. And so it was really kind of a different, much different than it has been lately. Because it's been a whole new class. So anyway, that was the thing that happened, and I would get there and get my bills, read my bills, try to get my bills read, and then after I got my bills read, usually in the morning you had constituents coming in, and you had committee meetings, and you would go to your committee meetings like agriculture, tourism, education, where I think the 3 committees that I was on, that I was appointed to, and then those would meet, and you'd take up the bills, and of course, first readings on the floor, second readings in committee, third readings on the full Senate, and you'd go to your committee meetings and you'd hear your bills, and that's where they were either amended. I learned a great deal because I really I was not a government major or a pre-law major or anything like that. I was a physical education major. And, so this was it was really a learning experience for me. Ben Brown was really great. He sat right in front of me and he helped me a lot. He had been in the House. Helen Cole was wonderful. Helen was really a neat person. I wish she were still living today so you could interview her. because, in fact, Helen's almost a relative. So, I mean, there was that Chertel relative thing there, even though she was a Republican and I was a Democrat. Helen was really nice. Shedrick was nice, but Shedrick commuted, so she wasn't there all the time.
Okay.
And so she didn't have a lot of time to fool with the rest of us. Plus, she's a lawyer, so she had a law practice she was doing. So that was another thing that kind of kept her. But I'll think back of Shedrick, she was the only woman for so long, and they ridiculed her so on the restroom, because she screamed because she wanted a restroom for the women in the lounge, the Senate lounge. And everybody hee-hawed and scoffed about how that was a waste of money. Promise you it wasn't. Because when you're up there working and you're trying to hear bills, you're trying to get to committee meetings, and every school in the countryside is up there with all of their 200 or 300 kids, and you're trying to get things done, you cannot get in any of the bathrooms. So, I mean, it was a good thing that they did that. I thank Bernice for that. She took the heat on it, but it was good. And then the afternoon, you went into session about 1 o'clock, at 1:30, it's according to when the speaker wanted you to, or the president pro tem wanted you to go in. And you went in, and then you started hearing your bills. And of course, there was always the agenda, and it was always sobering to find out that bills might get out of committee, but that didn't mean that they were going to get heard on the floor.
And how was that decision made?
The president pro tem
Decides.
and the leadership decided, and the floor leader decides what bills will be heard. And you don't just jump up and say, I want my bill heard.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait until it's on the agenda and it's called for on the floor. And then you can. And that's why this knowing how to attach yourself to somebody else's bill, to move, to reconsider the vote by which your bill passed, and then to get control of somebody else's bill. There's all kinds of things that you learn to do. There's more than just saying, I got a good bill and it needs to be heard. And at the local level, I'm sorry, you've got sound effects in the background.
I think it's perfect.
That may be Synovia. No, that's not Synovia. That's one of the others. A Synovia Pettit is the one that usually comes up and tells us what's going on. Well, anyway, I was going to say the maneuvering to see whether your bill is going to be heard or not, and the leadership. Oh, at the local level, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican doesn't matter. I mean, in most rural communities, a great deal, and you don't have party differences so much. At least you used to didn't. It's gotten greater now. It's gotten uglier now. I mean, it's much uglier than it used to be. At the county level, there's a little bit of difference whether you're Republican or Democrat, but you're still basically working for the good of the county or of the town. When you get to the state level, you start seeing there is a difference. And you start understanding that those planks that those different parties have embraced at the federal level come down, and you're expected to adhere to the planks of the party if you want to move things along, Now then, it's changed now, and we have lots of people that party doesn't matter. Or at least they say party doesn't matter. At the federal level, it gets worse. It does. I mean, your party politics then, it really gets to be party then. And you're expected to definitely embrace what the planks are of your party's platform. Well, the sound effects in Homer, Oklahoma, out in the country on a wonderful Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry, they have come to the house to talk. So you're just going to have to, you want me to send them away? I can send them away.
Will they go?
Yeah.
Will they go?
Oh, yeah, they will.
So tell me about the first time you presented a bill on the floor then. Actually, or at least argued for
when
one.
I tried to get one out of committee and it failed miserably. I can't even remember what that one was, but I just thought it was the greatest thing yet. And I couldn't even get it out of committee. It bombed out in committee. I was primarily committed to women's and children's issues in education. Okay. Naturally, I would be, and to tourism. I mean, to that part, because that was my background, was recreation and
good fit.
And it was a good one. In fact, the last 2 years I was chairman of tourism, and that's why I brought something down to show you if you want me to a little bit later. But I was chairman of tourism the last 2 years, and I passed a bill. The first bill. I'm trying to think what the first bill was I carried, and I can't even really remember what it was right now. I know one bill that I carried that I was very passionate about was, I can tell you about that one. And it was, I felt that when a child had been abused or something had happened to a child that was traumatic, I felt that it would be sufficient for the child to tell the story to a video, and it be videoed, and then the child not be put back through that trauma again to have to repeat what had happened to them for the judge for this, that, and other things. That I was the author of that bill, and it would be allowing video testimony or depositions to be used, or stories to be used when you were you had maybe a sex offender or something of that sort, to keep the child from having to tell the story over and over or be questioned over and over. And it passed both houses, and in fact it passed, and the governor signed it, and it was declared unconstitutional. You always have the right to face your accuser. And I still think, and I think it's wrong. I still think it's wrong. I think there needs to be some sort of differentiation there for children. I really feel that there should be. And I feel like that a child shouldn't have to repeat that story over and over and over, or be questioned by different people, because it just stands to reason they're going to get confused. They're going to it's going to leave a mark that will, especially in the case of abuse or that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it was, but that was one I was really disappointed in, that it was, and I think they're making some inroads in that very thing, but I don't know. It says that, you will always have the right to face your accuser. And so that was it. Then I carried one bill to make stealing fish a crime.
Stealing fish?
Stealing fish crime. People didn't know. You get the strangest things. Dunn's Fish Farm, which is down at Fitztown down here, well, they raise fish and put in places, Well, they sell them, and people were coming into the fish farm and stealing fish. And so they said, we can't do anything about it because stealing fish is not a crime. That you can go out and fish any place, as long as it's and so anyway, that was one of the ones that was kind of funny. I got kidded a whole bunch about that. Then the other bill that I carried, you want me to go ahead about bills?
Yeah.
The other bill that I carried that I really, it was fun, and it was just a wonderful thing to do. It was a wonderful thing to do. And so, they're determined to come back. They want to, you're sorry, you're going to be serenaded here. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
The other bill that I carried that was such a delightful bill to carry, and there's kind of a story behind it. When I was in high school, my science teacher was Dr. Doyle McCoy. When I started teaching at the university, Dr. Doyle McCoy had moved to the university, or when I was a student at the university, Dr. Doyle McCoy, because I went to East Central as undergrad, Dr. Doyle McCoy was the science teacher there, so I had botany with Dr. Doyle McCoy. Had him in high school and had him in college. And then when I came back and started teaching, I taught with him several years. Well, I got elected to the Senate then. And here comes this little knock on my door one day. And there is Dr. Doyle McCoy on my door. And he says, he's a botanist. He was a botanist. And he said, we need a state flower that we can grow that will be pretty. He said, the mistletoe is, of course, a parasite, and it can't be grown. And Oklahoma needs a state wildflower. And I said, well, I think that's great, Dr. McCoy. Didn't know what I was going to do. So anyway, so Dr. McCoy said, let's see what we can do. So we looked at different things, and we came up with the Indian blanket. And him being a botanist, he thought that was wonderful because Indian blankets grow all over this part of the country. So it was the way a bill is supposed to be done. I carried the bill in the Senate, and Kelly Haney, who's the renowned artist today, the Indian, and also right now the principal chief of the Seminole Nation, Well, he was in the House at that time, and Kelly Haney carried it in the House, and I carried it in the Senate, and Dr. McCoy lobbied every one of the House, all 101 House members, and all 48 senators. He lobbied all of them, and when I introduced the bill, and when Kelly introduced the bill, it passed with flying colors. Of course, we got a little kidding over it, And George Nye was governor still. George Nye was governor the first 2 years I was in the Senate, and Henry Bellman was the governor the last 2 years I was in the Senate. And George came to me, and George, by the way, went to college. We were college chums at East Central. George was a history major at East Central when I was a physical education major at East Central. So we went back a long time. And George came to me and he says, Slats, that's my nickname, was Slats. And anybody that says Slats, they immediately, you'll know who it is. They're back again, but you'll know who it is. Well, anyway, he says, Slats, I don't really think you want to do that. He said, I know it's a good idea, but he said, I carried Oklahoma to make that our state song. And he said, I got ridiculed. And he said, everybody knows I'm the one that introduced the music for our state song. He said, do you want to do it? I said, well, yeah, I think I do. Dr. McCoy wants it done. So anyway, I carried the bill, and sure enough, it passed. And here's a picture of it when it was signed. And of course, there I am, and there's Betty Price, who is the director of the arts now at the present time, George Nye, Abe Hesser, who was the tourism director at that time, Kelly Haney, and then there's Dr. McCoy. And of course, that was at the bill signing, and you can see Betty had us, we had a blanket that had all the pretty colors on it that the Indian blanket has in it, and then there's the sign, the picture there. And then the other thing that Kelly did, Kelly painted then this picture to make this the official picture of the Indian blanket. And can you see that? And these were prints that were made, and supposedly print number 1 is supposed to be in the governor's mansion. I don't know where it is today, but it was supposed to be. And so that was, but Kelly Haney did this one for us. And not only that, but then he carried the bill also, in the House. So that was a fun thing to do. Another fun thing that we did was Helen and Bernice and myself. We were the 3 women in the Senate there. And this picture was made in Guthrie because the Senate went to Guthrie to the original State House there, and we passed a bill. It was sort of a symbolic thing that we did, and it was sort of to go down in history, and that we were passing the bill there, and it was in 1985, Convention Center Hall, Guthrie, Oklahoma, May the 14th, 1985, and we actually passed a bill there, and then brought it back, and it went through all the other steps that it was supposed to go. It was just sort of a housekeeping thing that we did, But it was fun working with Bernice and Helen. They were neat people to work with.
Okay.
Let me show you another one while we're doing this.
While we're doing this, sure.
Then toward the end of the year, of my term there, I carried the bill, and may have been one of the things that helped get me defeated. In fact, it may have been. I carried a 0.1% sales tax that went to tourism, and it allows the Department of Tourism 0.1% on every kind of recreational activity, hotels, motels, water skiing, rental, anything that boat rent, anything that is a recreational activity. There's 0.1% that they're supposed to. It's supposed to go to the tourism department so that we can do advertising decently, and it's still in effect, of course. And this was Abe Hesser was the director of tourism at the time, and these were some of the posters that were done. And then we started doing. We'd only had Oklahoma Today as a publication at that time, and so this allowed us to do. This has allowed tourism to do more than they could have done. And that was when I was chairman of tourism the last 2 years that we did that. But I was severely criticized for it. Oh, yes, I was a tax hog. You know, I mean, whenever you vote, that's another thing that you'll soon find out, that anytime you vote, you're probably redistributing money. Whatever you're doing, you're taking money from one pot and putting it in another, or one pocket and putting it in another pocket. One of the most bitter fights that was done when I was there was between the rural electric co-ops and OG&E. I mean, and it was a bitter battle, and it was over turf. And they're awesome competitors, and it's money. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's any vote, just regardless of how innocent it may sound, it's either going to create some money or take some money away or do something with money.
So whoever's the chair of appropriations has a tough road to hoe.
They're important.
So where was your office? We'll switch gears a little bit.
Oh,
do you remember?
Started out on the 4th floor and got moved to the 3rd floor, though, so I could just run into the chamber. All freshmen were relegated to the 4th floor when we first started. The lower you are on the pecking order, the further you are away from the activity. And so then I was on the 3rd floor my last all 3 years after that. And you know, that was I can't remember 3-something on that side. But anyway, it was quite an honor to get to move down to the 3rd floor, and I even got some new furniture when I did. It was new to me. It was old. It was old furniture that it was somebody else's furniture, you know, and so that it was that kind of thing. But anyway, that was kind of exciting, and you got to be when you got chairmanship. And of course, I was chairman of tourism, you know.
Get a little closer, braver.
Yeah, she's looking for a place to lay an egg. I said they'd bring eggs to the house. Anyway.
Well, after hours, once the session ended,
Okay.
What did you do after hours?
Okay, usually the session usually then after the session was over, and it was according to how many bills we had to pass that day, how long it lasted. And also, I was there when now we could go all night. We covered the clock, and we could stay from then on. At the end of session, when it came time to do sign and die, you know, I mean, we could have stayed there all week with the clock covered. We did not have to adjourn at a particular time. We could go on until July the 4th, if the leadership wanted us to do it. But anyway, when you got through with your work, then I usually went in the office then, and that's when you worked with your secretary. You saw constituents. You did your letters. You got stuff ready for the next day and all. And then being up there by yourself, then I usually hung around the office, and the thing that was so different for me was on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings, the lobbyist always had a reception, and some lobbyists did. Some you went to, some you didn't. It's according to whether it was somebody in your district or something that you needed to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And it was usually held close someplace to the Capitol. And there was never, ever, was there ever a lobbyist ever say, I expect you to vote for this. They might try to come by your office and try to explain their side of a bill. But I never had any of them even talk or leave the impression that they were trying to influence or strong arm or anything of that sort you into voting for something.
Mm-hmm.
But you could always call a lobbyist and say, now tell me, what's your take on this? And then that way, if you were smart enough to know that there was OG&E here and rural electric co-ops here, or there were farmers here and something else over here, you could get the different sides of the story, and you could do that. And so as a result, that would be something that you might, that you'd use. But they would always have a reception, and they didn't last long. It was always just go by, and they'd have snacks. And of course, there was usually something to drink. And I was always very, very careful about that. I'm not a wild teetotaler, or don't think don't have any, a glass of wine's not going to kill you. But I was very, very careful about that. I never had any of my colleagues ever get out of line. I was never, in fact, there would be occasion where it was someplace maybe in downtown Oklahoma City where there would be someone would say, would you like to ride down there with me? If it was someplace, that we were going to go that might be kind of bad, that getting back in the car to come back to the Capitol to go home or something. But never ever was anybody ever said anything. Well, we can talk about that one when you ask me, and probably another question about that, because you have to, how you deal with remarks that you don't approve of.
Just go ahead, you're there.
I'm already there.
Take off.
Okay. Well, you're going to run into that.
Mm-hmm.
After all, there were 3 of us there, and the guys are going to say things, the men are going to say things, and it has been a man's world. That's all there is to it up there. And they've had this exclusive club that's been their very own. So there are going to be things that are going to be said and things that are going to be done that are not quite like you'd like to have it. Sometimes it's nice to be deaf and dumb. When I say deaf and dumb, blind and not hear, sometimes that's the best way to handle it. And that's the way what I used to always tell my teachers. When you have a child that's doing something that you want to discipline them about, be sure you know how you're going to do the discipline, okay? Have a plan of action there, and be sure that you're going to come out on top when you get ready to start that battle with that child or with whoever it is. And if you can't handle it then, maybe you need to let that go and come back the next time it happens and get your ducks lined up so that you can do what needs to be done. But if you react to every little thing that's said and done, you're going to come off as, well, you're not going to be effective. You can't be effective if you're going around picking a fight over every little thing that's said and done. You just can't do it. So there's times when you need to sort of look the other way, or not hear what somebody says, or sometimes, have this deer in the headlight. Oh, real? I don't understand. And then turn around and walk. And then when you get ready, then do something about it. And back to the very beginning when we were talking about the Equal Rights Amendment and the oldest daughter applying for vet school, she wasn't accepted the first time. And I felt probably this was back at the vet school, it was the majority it was just beginning to have women in the vet school. And I think that was probably something then. And that was another thing I thought, by crackers, if she wants to go to vet school, that's why we need another equal rights. We need that equal rights amendment so that sex shouldn't enter into that if she's capable of doing it.
That was in the 80s too, mid 80s.
So it was that it all was there. And I've talked to Susan Paddock, who is Senator Paddock now, who's our senator now. I was involved in her campaign. She was I was one of the first people she came to and talked about it. And I told her some things that she'd need to be able to do and not do. But Susan, lost my train of thought there. I was going to talk about her and the Equal Rights Amendment, I guess is what it was. But anyway, well, whatever you will ask me a question then.
Were you the first woman from the district then
Oh,
to win,
yes.
weren't you?
Oh,
And you beat an incumbent that had been in
About 3 or 4 terms, yeah.
several times.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then she followed you, so you kind of
No, there was a man between us.
Okay.
Oh, no, Dick Wilkerson was between us. When Dick Wilkerson ran against me when I was defeated, Dick Wilkerson ran against me. He spent well over $100,000. He and his brother had been involved in Someone Cry for the Children. Remember the 3 scouts that were abducted and killed up in the Tulsa area? They were, at camp, and Dick's brother, who was an OSBI agent, and Dick was in law enforcement also. That was a big thing. Victims' rights and taking care of that became a big issue in the campaign. He distributed videos. He was one of the first politicians, and I have the video in there. He made a video of his life. I mean, it was a clever. He was an awesome campaigner, great, and he made a video of his life. And he had been in the war, and was a recon something or other, and whoever did it, well, it was well done and patriotic. You stood up and cried, put your hand over your heart, and saluted the flag. It was and he had these made and passed them out like candy. They were passed out. Take this home and invite people over at your house to see it. It's a wonderful campaign tool in the rural areas. It's great. And I don't know why more politicians don't use it today, because it would be wonderful to do if you got that kind of money. Plus, he passed out the book, Someone Cry for the Children, and it told all about how they prosecuted and got the old boy and all, and those were also passed out, not to mention the other stuff. But he spent well over $100,000 on the campaign, and just unbelievable. There was no way. First of all, I was not going to go in debt myself. It was not worth that to me. And he had a machine in place, and I was beaten fair and square, and he ran on some issues that were really emotional.
Now, he didn't win the second time either. Did he run the second term?
Second time he didn't have an opponent, but then he won. But then term limits got him. No, he was term limited out. Term limited out. Yeah. So that was, but I mean, I'm not criticizing him. I can't take from him because he was, and he's a law and order. He was a law and order candidate, and he appealed to men, very appealing to the man, and to the law and order man, and to the NRA. And of course, I'm as good a shot as anybody. I quail hunt, I pheasant hunt. I can hold my own with anybody with a gun, and I'm not opposed to guns at all. Hey, I was raised tomboy, and that's one of the things I got a 22 for my 13th birthday. That was part of growing up. Going squirrel hunting and so on and so forth. With my dad, rabbit hunting with my dad, but at that time, and times had changed. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. When I ran, abortion Okay, and which is always an issue. Okay, I can remember talking to a civic club, and someone asked me about the abortion issue. And you remember this was '84, and I said, abortion is an issue that should be solved by the woman and her doctor and her God. Now that's where it should be handled, right there. If she has some family members involved, that's okay. But I said, that is her decision that she should make with her body. And I could get away with it. And I said, it's not your right or my right or anybody else's right. I said, abortion is an individual issue. And I said, if you believe that there is a wonderful heaven where there are no tears and no pain and no suffering, then how can you be so opposed to a little child that might be brought into this world and abused or neglected or starved or something happened to them, if that happens to be the decision that they're just going to heaven a little early? I said, how can you be opposed to that? It's going to happen to all of us sometime. So why? Why are you opposed if you really believe that there is that wonderful place where it's happy from now on, wonderful from now on? I could get away with it. Today, I don't know whether a woman candidate can even get away with that. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I just don't know whether they could, but I still feel very passionate about it. I feel very strongly about it. And I don't think that anybody should criticize anybody else on that. Yeah, it's something you have to live with and make that decision on, you know.
Have you noticed any other differences, like gender differences, like similar to that? Any other,
like
I don't know. I mean, probably most of your supporters were women. You think
No.
that voted for you? No, mixture.
The women the second time around did not vote for me.
Did not. That's interesting, isn't it?
Uh-huh. There were many of them that felt like when they really discovered I was a woman and I was doing a good job, my picture was in the paper, I was doing things, I needed to be home with my husband. To be out doing those things. So there were a lot of women, and especially the religious right.
Well, then that's changed some since then, since Susan's was elected too, then I guess.
A little so,
12,
but
14
you
years.
still find that in this part of the country. Your very conservative religious sects still feel very strongly that a woman's place should not be out front.
So gender's still an issue
Yes,
as much as geography or age.
probably so. Probably so. I mean, that probably has something to do with it. And I mean, you know, it's. Of course, I do things now that I do things now that somebody not as old as I am couldn't do.
Interesting.
I mean, I think I do. I mean, and of course, I probably express my opinion on things right now, where other women might not do it, but I do right now. I do.
We're doing fine.
So anyway, as you can see, I do have some ideas. Go ahead.
No, you're doing fine. If you had to pick one moment during the campaign that just sticks out, do you have one? A campaign story?
Well, let me think.
If not a campaign, then while you were in the Senate, anything that just...
Oh, yeah, the one in the Senate was funny. I've got this article from the New York Times upstairs because it was written up in the New York Times.
Okay.
And I really got ridiculed. I got kidded about it. Okay, what happened was, fiddlesticks. This Don Rickles, I called him. Okay, Don Nichols was in Okemah which was in my Senate district. And he was talking to a group of people in Okemah. And he was talking to them about all these things. And something came up about fish hunt, wildlife, something. And he said, that is a state issue. Said, you should talk to your senator about that. Said, your senator, and somebody in the audience said, Billie Floyd. He said, oh, yes. Said, I know him. And of course, everybody just hee-hawed right then, and because I was really pretty popular in Okemah. And so they just, he said, looked at him and they said, no, Senator Nichols. Said, he is a she. And of course, Senator Nichols just turned red, and they really gave him a bad time because he said, oh, I know him well. And they just howled because Senator Nichols didn't know him well because him was a she. So that was one. And then it was written up in the New York Times, the story was, of Nichols and him doing that gaffe, up there. And they presented it to me on the floor of the Senate. I think Ben Brown had it framed and gave it to me. And I've got all my Senate stuff hanging upstairs where my office, I've got a little office at the top of the stair landing there. And it's hanging up there on the wall, But that was a fun thing. Something not to do when you're campaigning. Would you like to hear about that?
Sure.
Oh, I had my best foot forward, and I was just going, oh, how are you, shaking hands. Yes, how are you, Billie Floyd, please vote for me, and oh, what a pretty little kid, Oh, gosh, those are great eyes, and I get to this lady, and she has this flowing caftan.
Okay, back to your story.
Anyway, oh boy, I tell you what, I was just campaigning, doing my best, just going down the line, just saying, how are you, and I get to this lady and her husband here, and she's got on this flowing caftan, and I said, oh, and when are you expecting? She looked at me. I am not. I don't think I got her vote. I don't think I got either one of their votes. I mean, I learned a lesson. I knew better. I just did it. You just get to rolling, and I did it. I am, But that was one, and then I don't know. I can't. There are probably some other stories that were. I love to give speeches, and I really didn't have. I never did get into a crowd where I was heckled or anything like that.
Did your daughters do any campaigning?
Oh,
for
yeah.
you?
Yeah, everybody. My husband was a sign maker. I had a cousin that lived in, Calvin over here that helped Ben put out signs. And, I had, it was all family. My son-in-law, I'm not sure. No, I don't. Yeah, my son-in-law, he helped put out signs when he could. I think they were living in Ponca City at the time. But anyway, everybody worked, and I had lots of friends and colleagues that pitched in, and it was all strictly nobody was paid. It was strictly if you wanted to do it, okay, but no paid employees on this one, at all, and.
So election night.
Oh, election night was wonderful. Election night was just, it was great. We just had a wonderful, we had people, I don't know how many hundreds of people were there. It was really a people's campaign. I mean, we just had, everybody was there, and it was just.
There as in here?
Here. Oh, we were here in
Okay.
Ada. Oh, yeah, we were here in Ada, and they all drove in from every place, and from Colgate and from Atwood and from Okemah and from all of the area. I had 6 counties. There were 6 counties then.
A lot of miles then.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pontotoc, Cole, Murray, Okfuskee, Hughes, all of Hughes. All of Hughes, all of Pontotoc, and all of Cole. And then parts of 3 others. And so, but it was quite a celebration. It really and truly was. And then, as I say, when I went up to the Capitol and was sworn in, it was something that I don't think I've ever had anything like it. But I like people. and they wanted, they were, I made them, I hope they felt like they were a part of it.
Well, if the gallery was full.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
So what have you done since leaving office then?
Oh my. Really want to know. Okay, I left office. I came back. I'm not one that disappeared off the face of the earth. I'm still very active. I work right now. I still work for the university. I do first year residency teacher supervision for the university. I am active in historical preservation. I work for the U.S. Census Bureau, and I do interviews for the U.S. Census Bureau, and I've been doing that for about 6 or 7 years, I guess now. And I'm involved in projects, all kinds of projects. Right now, I'm working with the 911 signage. I'm working with trying to restore some historical things that have Ada has not really kept up with, restoring and keeping their historical thing. So we're working on that. What else do I do? I have 2 wonderful grandsons. My youngest daughter, Amy, and Russ are back here in Ada now. Russ is in investments, and Amy teaches 4th grade. Both girls said they would never teach, ever. Their mother and dad were both teachers, and they would never, ever teach school. Dr. Carrie Floyd is the director of the Vet Tech program at Murray State College, and so she is in education. And Amy B. Floyd Allen is a 4th grade teacher at Washington Elementary here in Ada. 2 grandsons, Jesse and Joel. Jesse is almost a junior at East Central, and is very active in student activities, student affairs. I mean, either one of my grandsons could either be a politician or a preacher. Just take your choice, because they both like to perform. And the youngest one is a junior in high school, and plays football, plays left tackle on Ada High's football team. And he's also on the moot court team this year at the high school. So he will be doing the legal competition. So we're all excited about that, and that's going to be a fun thing,
He may be the politician of the family.
He may very well be. Yeah, either, as I say, preacher or politician. Just take your choice. And so, but they're fun, and they live close by, and I see them often. And they help with things. And I lost my husband 3 years ago, and I still, though I'm very active and do all kinds of things. And
Thoughts of running again?
Oh, well, in fact, they called the other day. Just, you mentioned that. They called the other day, and they are looking for someone. I was very fortunate when I was in the Senate. Lonnie Abbott was the House member that shared this district. And Lonnie had been there since, he had a great deal of seniority and in the House. And you ask about things that were surprising. When I was there a freshman, I remember one night Lonnie walking across the rotunda, Representative Lonnie Abbott walking across the rotunda and saying to me, "Well, I've just put $200,000 in a bill for the Votech school there in Ada. You better take care of it in the Senate." And I said, "What?" I said, "What?" He said, "Take care of it in the Senate. You could do it." And I'm thinking, how do I take care of $200,000 in the Senate, in the budget and appropriations? What do I do? So I got through it. We have the Votech school here in Ada. That's something that, those are things that you learn. But Lonnie was, the political scene has changed so, because he could do that, because he had been there so long, and the Democrats were so in charge of the House of Representatives. He could do that. Now, you couldn't do that today. So they called me back to my story. They called me 2 or 3 weeks ago from the House of Representatives looking for someone to run against the Republican that's in the House now. And they said, "Can't you find someone to do this?" Well, I said, "I'm not young enough. I don't want to. It costs so much money." That's the other thing. It would take all the fun out of it. If somebody would just say, here's $100,000, go run," I'd say, okay.
Get your mitts and go.
Oh, you bet, I could do it. And I mean, Pontotoc County would be a piece of cake to campaign. I mean, I did 6 counties. Ignorance was bliss, though. And the first time around, I mean, I had no idea how hard it was going to be and what I was going to have to do. I had no idea. Now I would know what you need to do. And of course it's changed so because you have to use the media so much. And we don't have a lot of media around here. It's mail-outs, handouts. We only have a couple of local television, 12 and 10 are the only television stations. Then you've got your radio stations, and then you've got newspapers. And not everybody takes newspapers. So it's a different kind of campaigning. But I still say one-on-one, my name is Billie Floyd, and your vote means a mint to me, and I sure would like you to vote for me. And there are people that want to be asked to vote for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you might reconsider and do it anyway one time. No, not going to go there. All right. Well, can you see positive and negative aspects, I guess, to having served?
Oh, the positive is wonderful. I grew, I learned, okay. This is just like, you remember when Clarence Thomas was being confirmed, and right now, of course, that's going on right now because his book has just been released. Clarence Thomas was confirmed. Okay, the Judiciary Committee had to confirm his appointment by the President to the Supreme Court, okay? Remember the bloodbath that took place, or do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Okay. We watched it. I told the people that knew me, having been just at the state level, the President of the United States told the Judiciary Committee, Hatch, the others that are on there, anyway, I would call them the other day, he told them, he said, "I want him confirmed. I don't care what happens. I don't want to be involved in it, but you get the job done. I don't care whose head rolls. I want him on the Supreme Court, and do not involve me." They were mostly Republicans. It was a Republican president. They did it. I saw that at a lesser level, at the state level, when the governor would say, "I want that done. I don't want to be involved in it. I don't want my name with it. It's your committee. You're appointed to that committee. That's your job. I want it done." Mm-hmm. And that's where your party politics, and I mean, there'd be no way that I can prove that story is true. But Scout's honor, I bet you a nickel it is. I mean, and it's just like we were talking about Anita Hill, and I really admired Anita Hill. I really did, and I still do, because I think the lady was probably telling the truth. And she got brought in. She didn't want to be brought in, but they brought her in. I mean, she was brought into that, and not by the ones that were trying to get a confirmation done. It was by the other side that said, "You've got to come in on this." And I said, if she were going to make up a story, she's a smart lady, she would have certainly made a better story than a pubic hair on a Coke can up as her story. I mean, that she would have made a better story up if she were going to go in there and lie about something. I think the poor gal was telling the truth. I saw her on television the other day. They interviewed her. Did you see her on one of the morning shows? She was she said, "I'm not going there." She said, "What I did has opened the workplace up to women today to be able to not be uh, discriminated or talked to or that sort of thing. She said that was a step in our growth and our development. That was a necessary thing, apparently, to happen. And she said, I'm not going there. I'm not talking about his book. I I stand on my testimony, and that's all I'll say about that. But she said my actions have made a difference in the workplace for women today. And she said, if that's what came from it, then that is worth it. And I mean, I was just awed because I thought, oh gosh, she is a class act, and she really, you know, so that was one of the things. Oh, I had an opportunity to serve with Vicki Miles LaGrange.
I interview her in a couple of weeks.
You do?
It's
Oh,
gonna be
you tell
interesting.
Vicki Miles hello.
Okay.
She was delightful. And then, in Tulsa,
Penny
Horner.
Williams?
Maxine Horner. She has some health problems, I think.
I haven't been able to get her yet.
I think she's had some health problems. But Vicki Miles LaGrange, I certainly admired her. And I never will forget, we voted or we were talking about the flags. You know, the Confederate flag is always an issue, especially with blacks and Southern people and that sort of thing. And I remember her saying, her feelings on that. And that's another thing that bothers me. Today, we get so upset. To me, an intelligent politician, it's okay if they change their mind. If they have supported or made a mistake, why in the world can they not say, that was wrong, I did the wrong thing? Now, I want to, yes, I'm changing, that's wrong. But if you grow and become more intellectual or more enlightened on something and change a position, they immediately think you're a wishy-washy and they just crucify you for it. And I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong because there are lots of things that you might not understand this year, but you might understand it a couple of years from now. Mm-hmm. It's like me. I mean, I grew. Oh, I am thankful every day for being able to be in the Senate. I tell you, it was wonderful. And I learned so many things. I made friends. I just wouldn't take for it. I would not take for it.
Do you stay in touch with any of the women that served with you?
A little,
Or
not
quite
a great
few.
deal. I'm not a big one to do a lot of that. I mean, like
Christmas cards?
classmates and Christmas cards, and I don't do a lot of that. I guess I don't know. I'm too busy doing other things, and I'm just not much on that. Maybe it's a bad thing, but lots of people do,
You must be getting. We can finish up if you want. If you've got anything else, my last question I can ask, or do you want? Is there anything else I need to ask that I haven't that you can think of?
Oh gosh, I don't know. There's probably I'll think of a jillion things I wish I could have told you.
Sure.
I couldn't have done it without my family. I have a sister who was absolutely magnificent. I mean, she's my older sister, and she's was wonderful, and she was the one that has always pushed me. That back to my early childhood, my mother and father were just wonderful parents. I mean, and our mother, even though she was a stay-at-home mom, she was one that always said, well, you can go do that, you can do that. She was really, and my sis is one of those kind of people. So me coming along, and they laughed and they said, well, when you came along, Mom and Dad just let you do anything you wanted to do. Well, I don't know about that. But anyway, I did come along at a wonderful time. And
how far did your mother go in high school? Did she complete?
oh no, Mom and Dad, neither one,
Finished?
8th or 9th. I mean, they went as far as they could go in school at that time, and it was probably 7th, 8th, or 9th grade, somewhere along there.
And did your sister go to college too?
My sister graduated college, master's degree, and my brother also. And my brother taught some, but did not stay with teaching. My dad worked for the Railway Express Company. We were fortunate enough during those Depression years, he had a job. And later, my dad went into construction houses and that sort of thing, building houses. And my brother went with him. But that was later. But no, Mom and Dad. My dad was a excellent. I mean, he could add up figures faster than we could. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were both self-taught. And right was right and wrong was wrong, and neither one were extremely fanatics on a religious thing or on anything. Mom used to say, you can make bad out of anything. She said you could overdo anything. That was one of the things that we were, moderation or temperance on things were always good, and I think that was another thing that has tempered the way I look at things. You can make harm out of eating, harm out of going to church, harm out of whatever you want to do. You can overdo something.
Had they already passed when you were
Yes.
elected?
Yeah, and I hated that, and my aunt had too. So that was I really have wished that they could have been here to have seen that. They would have been thrilled.
Well, they were
to death.
watching.
Oh, yeah.
Just not in the room.
Yeah.
Up there somewhere.
Yeah, you bet. Can you think of anything else that you need to ask?
I'm sure I'll think of something as I go up
So,
the road too.
But I'm still very active. I still do all of the things, and I don't know. I was just trying to think what else. Oh, I've had an antique shop, but I didn't like that because you had to stay home, and I decided that wasn't any fun. So I turned my garage. That log cabin is where the people originally lived that built this house, and from the 2-story part forward is log. And so, I mean, I lived here 50 plus years. Kind of been here a little while, So, one of those things, but.
Any plans to retire? No.
No.
Did you get to travel when you were in the Senate?
Oh, yes, I did. I got to go to the meetings, where the Southern Leadership Conference, I believe it was. I think that's what it's called. I got to go to California, which I'd never been to one, and then got to go to, I think it was Louisville, Kentucky to one. They usually alternate. And that's where you go, and you see what other states are doing, and you find out about their bills and what's passed and what hadn't passed, and kind of keeps everything going. Those were really good. They were really good. Susan, our senator now, she's doing a good job. She's really doing a great job with that sort of thing.
And so what kind of activities in the political arena are you currently doing? Any things?
Well, of course, I talk to her all the time. And
moral support.
Yeah. And she says, it's so nice to talk to you because you understand what's going on and why I've been doing these things and why I'm pulling my hair out, when you can't get things done. And I belong to the Democratic Local Party. I think one of those questions was, how much did the Democratic Party or did your party influence your election? Mm-hmm. Not a great deal. They did not get involved a great deal. It's a given thing that in the primary, your parties do not get involved, or at least the Democrats don't get involved in the primary. If you've got 2 Democrats running in the primary, they don't do anything until it gets to the general election. And by the time it got to the general election, well, there we were, and they still didn't do a great deal that I knew of at that point in time. But other counties and other places might be more active than ours was then. Lou and Wes were very active when I got elected. They were really they were here, and they were big, strong Democrats, and so that may have been some help too, because Lou and Wes Watkins were here then, and they were Democrats at that time, and that might have helped. But
okay, my last thing is, if you don't have anything else, is when history's written about you, what would you like for it to say?
That she did her best to make this place a little better off for future generations. And it's kind of like just the other day, I heard Governor Bellman was being interviewed on OETA, and he was asked, what's the difference between a politician and a statesman. And Governor Bellman said, a politician looks forward to the next election. A statesman looks forward to the next generation.
I need to go back to, I forgot, did you want to say anything about your advice for women who are considering politics? Anything?
Well, I say, hey, if you like you gotta like people.
Okay.
You have got to like people, and you've got to enjoy dealing with conflict and confusion, because politics is making making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I mean, that's what I mean. That's just about what it is, because you've got the awfulest mess usually in so many cases, and then you've got to figure out ways to make this work, or to hurt the least amount of people with what you do. I mean, that's the other bad thing about it, because somebody so many times gets hurt or disappointed or something when you make those decisions. You got to be strong. You got to be strong, and you can't afford to let people talking about you bother you, because they're going to talk about you, good or bad. They're going to talk about you now, and you can't let that bad get you down, because you're not going to keep all those people happy all the time. And that was the other thing that was kind of disappointing. I've heard people say, when you're a politician, well, it's not what you did yesterday that counts, it's what you're going to do for me today, handout kind of thing, Right now I'm listening to The Worst Hard Years. Have you read it?
I've started it. I haven't gone too far into it.
Well, see, that's one of the things that I do. You will absolutely, it's just a marvelous book. And when I drive so much, I mean, I'll drive 200 miles a day, and I've gotten hooked on audiobooks.
I need to do that too, since you said that.
You do.
Yes.
Oh, you do, because if you can drive and listen at the same time, And I mean, that one, and then of course Tim Russard's book.
I've read several of his having to do with his father.
Oh, that's the
those
one.
stories.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm.
The one of his dad. That's Big Russ or Big
Russ and Me, isn't it?
Big Russ and Me, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you'll cry.
I do.
You'll cry. I mean, it is just, I just love it, And then, of course, Doris Kearns Goodwin's book on Abraham Lincoln. Have you done that one?
No.
Well,
haven't done that one.
Well,
put that to the list.
You need that one, because that one is just absolutely, it's just great. And then go on and listen to Brokeback Mountain. Have you read Brokeback Mountain?
And I've watched the movie.
Well, you need to read the book. You need to hear. I love her. She is absolutely, I love her books. They're wonderful.
Well, that's from my neck of the woods, too. It's from Western North Carolina. That's where that was written. The set, right? And
No. It's in
Brokeback
Wyoming.
Mountain?
Brokeback Mountain's in
I'm
Wyoming.
thinking of Cold Mountain then.
What?
Cold Mountain.
Cold Mountain's the one you're thinking
Okay.
about. No,
Brokeback
Brokeback Mountain's Wyoming
then
and
I need to do that.
Arizona. I mean, it's the mountain states.
Okay.
And it's the mountain states. And I tell you, she is the most. She did Shipping News, Brokeback Mountain, and Ace in the Hole was the other one that she's done, that are just. But you need to listen to Brokeback Mountain, and it's only one little CD, unabridged, and I mean, it's, forget the homosexual. It is a story that it's just one of those stories that you just it makes you understand people and how people, their lives, things that happen to them, that happen, and I mean, it just how it affects the things that they do and what's going to happen. And of course, I just love her. She's just so good. But Doris Kearns Goodwin is great too. So
good for a librarian to hear these things.
Oh.
That you're actually reading books or listening to them.
I tell you, and what's the one about Abraham Lincoln? I always forget the title of that one. This gray hair, that's the bad thing. I didn't mention one other person that was very, very instrumental and very important in my Senate career, and that was Glenn Johnson. Glenn Johnson was my other House member from Okemah when I was in the Senate. And Glenn was in the House at the time I was elected. Then he became Speaker of the House. And he was wonderful. He's just a wonderful mediator. He taught me so many things to be just a kid. And I still his mother. I lives in Okemah, and she and the crew in Okemah are just, they were wonderful to me. And then Glenn went from there to the president of Southeastern at Durant. And now that he's Chancellor of Higher Education. And so Glenn is one of he's one of the ones that just absolutely, he helped me with many, he's a wonderful mediator. He just does a great job of bringing people together and working things out so that you try to give everybody a little piece of the pie. Uh-huh. And he's real good. Oh, he's so good at that. So good. And a funny storyteller. I've already told you 2 or 3 jokes. The one that I always remember about that is we'd always get up at a political speaking, and he'd say he was going down the street campaigning, and he was telling these people, I sure do hope you'll vote for me. And he got to this old guy, and he says, well, I tell you what, what's your name? And he said, Glenn Johnson. He said, I'll sure vote for you, because that old boy we've got up there now, he's not any good. And of course it was Glenn, and he always tells that joke. And then there's but he always had, I never could tell the funny jokes like that. The only one that I could tell that was funny was the pregnant woman, and the other one was, we were in Colgate campaigning one night, and all my friends were with me, several of my girlfriends were with me, and we were going door to door. And we all gather at a certain place when it's all over. And here comes one of my friends, and she's shaking her pant leg like this. And she said, you're never going to believe this. I hope you can edit this. And we said, what? What are you doing? Looked down, and she had been knocking on this lady's door and asking her to vote for me. And 2 or 3 of her dogs came out and wee-weed on her leg.
Oh.
We said, well, did you let on? She said, I didn't let on. I didn't let on at all. I just asked her to vote for you and left. We said, good. Ooh, so you never know what's going to happen. But anyway, it's been delightful. And if you think of anything else, I just hope that I hope that women today will continue. And as I say, I hope that they'll do it, do anything they think they want to do, that they're big enough to do.
Well, there's 19 in the legislature now.
Isn't that
I did the math
exciting?
the other day. Yes.
Isn't that exciting?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for
It's been quite a
coming.
pleasure.
So I'm sorry the sound effects were so good. They finally left.